But yeah, we had a summer school this year, and man, my friends come out against me for having a summer school, vacation Bible school. But we had most of it outside. It's pretty safe having it outside. And because of that, we got a lot of youth that started coming here. And I'm trying to follow. I'm not saying I do the best at it, but I try to follow the Spirit of the Lord, not Spirit of man, Spirit of the Lord, not Spirit of the news or the government and everything. And I really felt we were supposed to have it. And man, good things come out of that. And one girl got saved and baptized, and it all started with that. Adriana and Hunter, they ain't missed a service since, and they weren't coming here before the Bible school. So but we're just going to keep serving the Lord, worshiping God, because just like you, I can tell by talking to you, you appreciate where you come from. You appreciate what God delivered you from. I appreciate that. And this chapter 9 on Revelation 15 is kind of short, and if I don't mess it up, I'm kind of going to talk about a little bit why the wrath of God is going to fall on this earth. God's been so good to us. Everybody's got such potential to live such a perfect life. But we want to do things our way, and we want to go against God's way. And that's why this earth is so full of misery today. That's why the earth is so full of sin and wickedness. And people will say, why would God allow this stuff to happen? God, if people would listen to what God said, what the Bible teaches, there wouldn't be all this awful stuff going on. I'm going to go ahead and get into Revelations, and then I'll follow it up with the message I believe the Lord gave me. And I'm glad you guys came, because I really want, and when I preach tonight, I don't want nobody to think I'm judging them. The past you all went through, we can't change nothing about it. But I've got to try to prevent these young people from making the same mistakes we did. Okay, we're in Revelation chapter 15. Okay, and I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous. 7 angels having 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. And I say this every time I'm teaching. Revelation makes more sense to me. The first 4 chapters is the 7 churches of Asia. And there were churches 2,000 years ago. We can kind of use them for examples. But John was talking to them while they were still around. And then we get into things start happening on the earth, the seals and everything. And then there's tribulation, rapture, wrath poured out. Chapter 12, it kind of starts all over, because after that it parallels the middle part of Revelation. Then we go back to tribulation, rapture, wrath again. Then we go to the battle Armageddon, 1,000-year reign, Gog and Magog, and New Jerusalem comes down, judgment. If you understand it that way, the number one thing that helped me so much Revelation is realize it kind of starts all over at chapter 12, and it parallels. And I'll talk about next Sunday morning how the trumpets and the vials are pretty much the same thing, and they're the same, but they just come from different perspectives. Like Matthew, Mark, and Luke is the same, but from different perspectives. And verse 2. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire. And that's before God. God's before his throne. It's John's kind of doing a picture with words best he can. It looks like a sea of glass mingled with fire. You can imagine how pretty that is in a way. Just imagine a big old floor of glass. It looks like fire burning on it or something, And them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on a sea of glass, having the harps of God. A few things here. Revelation 6, it talks about the saints ask God, and they're talking to God. They're alive in heaven. They're talking to God. So when are you going to avenge our blood? Because they were getting martyred and they were getting persecuted. And he said, there's got to be more going through tribulation like you have. There's going to be more killed first. And then we read in 7 where they're in heaven. They come out of the tribulation. John said, and this is the encouraging part to me. Now, I don't look forward to no tribulation or nothing, but the encouraging part, John looked around and he said he's seen all nations, tongues, but there was so many people we couldn't number them. And I don't know, I guess the biggest events I've ever been to is like Boone's Day in Knoxville. Man, you talk about a crowd. I mean, you can't hardly see the end of the people. You just look, there's just people everywhere. And then I've been to UT football game. I think I just went one time. But man, the people in that place. It's like 100 and something thousand people. But John said that he looked around, man, he's like, I can't number all these people. Those were the people that did not take the mark of the beast. Those are people that decided to give their life rather than to take the mark of the beast. Those are people that rather die than deny Jesus Christ. And tribulation means pressure. The pressure is going to be rough. The pressure is going to be, we think, oh yeah, throw it at me. I can take whatever you throw at me. We say that until we're there. And then we're going to see what we're made out of. I think I'm tough. I feel like I'm tough. And I've got in my bed, I got a weighted blanket. I told my wife, I said, man, that's going to spoil me. I said, if I ever sleep somewhere and I ain't got that weighted blanket, I'm going to freeze to death. I didn't turn the heater on or nothing. I just put that on. It's so comfortable. And then Christmas, she wrote me in money. I'm sitting here a picture of my mind, trying to get my mind ready to be sleeping out in the woods and sleeping in ditches and hiding out and everything. And then she goes buys me a memory foam, that thick, to lay on my bed. And I said, man, I'm going to be so spoiled, I won't be able to sleep nowhere. And but we got to get in our mind, we got to get in our psyche. We're going to have to be tough. The world's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse. I love the technology of the world. I love that people that couldn't come tonight for snowed in. There's two girls that had strep throat, so their parents had to keep them home. I do believe in quarantine, when you're sick and stuff. And I love it that they're able to watch us. I love the technology. I love it. Gary wasn't here, and we call our music group Justice. It's just been us since COVID, just Gary, just me and him. And sometimes the kids will get up and sing and play congos and stuff. But we've been really praying for musicians. We got good teachers and preachers, but we need singers and stuff. But anyway, Sean played that. We was trying to think what to do this morning. Gary wasn't here. His first service he missed since he's been coming here. Well, he missed one to get his stuff from the old church. But it told you when to say the word, when to say the letter, and some words are fast. I'm like, the technology today is just wonderful. What we could have done with it if we all just stuck with the Lord. And when TV first come out, movies were wholesome, TV shows were wholesome. Gospel was on the television constantly. And there was a secular artist like Elvis or Johnny Cash or something on TV. Willie Nelson, they had to sing gospel or they wouldn't be able to be on TV. They had to sing gospel half the time. You get an old record just by any group that was out back in the day. And half their album would be gospel songs. But boy, how we strayed from that. We're a million miles. You can't make a movie today unless you say a bad word in it. Right. They say the stock exchange. You can't even put your company on the stock exchange. You have to have a homosexual, and I'll get into this stuff later. You have to have a homosexual on your board. So you have to have somebody on your board that's in sodomy before you can even put your company on stocks. And the people who owns the company's like, man, I've got billions of dollars on the line. This makes a difference to me struggling and flying around the world on jets and staying in these nice resorts and making all kinds of money. Hey, who's making those decisions? Netflix said you have to have a homosexual character. You can't have a TV show. Who's making that decisions? And I'm going to get into all that stuff here in a little bit. And I saw as it were a sea glass, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. I like the last part. One time I wanted to make an album. And I started taking guitar lessons because I wanted to play on it, and I wanted to play good, and I wanted to play guitar solos and everything. And while I was sitting in guitar, waiting on my guitar lesson, there was a guy sitting there, a teacher. He had a Gibson Les Paul, and he'd sit and play that to his students, and he'd be teaching them playing. I said, boy, that guy really good. That guy really sounds good. And the revelation hit me. I said, why am I paying me to take guitar lessons and have to spend hours and hours studying and money and still ain't no count, still can't play good? Why don't I just hire this guy to play? So I talked to him. I said, why don't you play? Save me a lot of time, because I've been playing for a long time, still can't play good. And he said, okay. But now, if we make it, guess what? We all know how to play guitar. All the kids here, they love guitar. Ezra, he can't, every time he goes by one, he's got to pick it up. But you know what? He can't play. These kids here been fooling with him for a while. Guess what? None of them can play. But when we get to heaven, that's one thing God hands us. Well, it says harps, you know, whether it's guitars or the harps like that. Either way, I'll take it because I want to play music. I've been following music a long time, and I still can't play nothing. But in heaven, we could, you know, burn it up. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are thy works, Lord God Almighty, just and true are thy ways, thy kings and saints. And you see appreciation when they get to heaven. It's like, God, you are just. I mean, these people just went through tribulation. They just went through a hard time here. But in heaven, they're like, God, you are just. We appreciate. Marvelous are your ways. Now, a lot of people wonder, so why would God let us go through tribulation? Every Old Testament saint went through, the prophets went through a tribulation. The disciples went through tribulations. Every time you look in the Bible, in the Strong's tribulation, it's a saint. Almost every time going through it. And Jesus said it in Matthew 24 and Mark 16, he wouldn't come back till after tribulation is what he said. So saints are going through it, but guess what? We don't go through the wrath. We're spared the wrath. And why is the wrath of God coming on earth? One reason is because of the tribulation on the saints. Now, you know, you imagine an army coming and messing around with being stationed and stuff. You know, eventually we're going to fight back. You mess with your people's family and stuff, eventually you're going to get it back. And God's going to get pretty sick of them messing with his saints and his people. And he told them in Revelation 6, to give a little bit more time. There's more got to be killed. Then, it's my turn. And I tell you guys, I don't want to be here when it's God's turn. And there's still going to be people here. When Jesus comes and raptures us out of here, the world's going to see him. It ain't going to be secret. And there's still going to be people left here for a little while. And then there's going to be the wrath, God's wrath poured out. And you don't want to be here for that. And the Song of Moses, I didn't put it up here because it's a very long chapter. But you can look up Deuteronomy 32 if anybody wants to write that down and read it later. And that's literally like what's supposed to be the Song of Moses in the Old Testament. I'm not saying 100% that that's it. But in Deuteronomy 32, that whole chapter is a song. You know, in preaching, there's all kinds of different style preachers. There's some, man, wouldn't step on a toe, save your life. And it's all lovey, gooey stuff. There's some that say, edgy, you can't hardly listen to them, it beats your eyeballs out. And then there's some that's kind of got, you know, balance and stuff. There's some that preaches real hard, that are you know, preaching pretty good gospel. And there's some that's preaching real hard, but if you sit back and listen to them, it's John Osteen in the skies. They still ain't trying to offend nobody. And I purposely don't offend nobody. I don't get nobody's business. I don't care what anybody does in their own time. It is not my concern. But preaching the gospel, I want to preach like Jesus. Jesus he did not hold nothing back. He called people snakes and vipers, and he attacked sin. He didn't hold back anything. That's why everybody wanted to kill him, because he attacked sin all the time, especially when there was sin in the church, the religious realm. And Paul, man, he'd go to these wicked towns and they just light them up on fornication, idolatry, and adultery and everything. And then you read all of them, all the epistles, all of the New Testament writers and Old Testament prophets. They all would just speak it like it is. Would just tell the truth like it is. And, you know, it's not a popular preaching style to just blast the truth with no filter. But I've watched churches that do that have preachers that preach that way. Just no filter, just preach the truth. Now, not all of their doctrines are great, but they don't hold nothing back. They grow. They grow slow, but they grow solid. And once a lot of churches, if one good sermon is hot, half the church is going to be gone because they can't handle it. But if you build that way, and I wanted to build this church from the get-go of not tolerating sin. God don't tolerate sin. Why would we tolerate sin? Now, what people do in their own business, In their own time, it's fine, but I'm not going to sit there and tell you it's okay. Because if you're in sin, it's not okay. You won't find one scripture in the Bible where God says he's okay with sin. Okay? It said, who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy. For all nations shall come and worship before thee. For thy judgments are made manifest. And after that I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was open. You know, God is a God of judgment. You know, you guys recognize me, I guess, from the wrestling era. I don't know which era exactly it was. But, you know, I believe God got me into wrestling. It was so funny. I was a preacher at the time. Now, I wasn't in it real heavy, but I was evangelizing a little bit. And I felt the call to get into wrestling. It was hard to explain. And everything just fell into place. And I prayed about it. God said, do not put this before me. And boy, I was passionate. I didn't sleep for like 3 days when I decided to get in. I didn't want to be a wrestler. I wanted to run shows, and that's what I should have done. And I started training with a guy that used to be a scout and trainer for the WWE, trained Rock and everything. That's who, he just moved up here by the time I decided to get into wrestling. Dr. Tom Pritchard's his name. And then they talked me into doing all the crazy stuff, you know. And some other things happened, totally ruined ministry. It was gone. And boy, I tell you what, I started making money when I was renting my ring out and selling merchandise. That was the sin pleasure for the season. I was like, well, you know, here I've quit preaching and stuff, I'm not going to church as much, but things go really good. I'm making a lot of money, and, you know, I'm not miserable yet. Boy, I tell you what, it wasn't long. I could almost tell you the day when chastisement started. I went from making a fortune to losing a fortune. Anybody ever worked 90 hours a week to lose money? And I started losing money. My finances, my credit was so good, I went to a car lot and didn't even have a job and bought two almost brand new cars with $500 on a big car lot. They were like, man, your credits are good. I walked in with $500, said, I don't even have a job. They closed my place I was working at and renovated it. And they said, let me look at your credit. Okay, pick whatever you want. I went and got me a good, nice truck, good, nice car. Here comes chastisement, start taking care of that down the road. And man, people have no idea how God beat my brains out while I was backslid like that. But see, that's the doctrine of chastisement. They're trying to start this new teaching that if you backslide, you never was saved to begin with. I guess you're going to have to read the first 4 chapters of Revelation, because he told the churches, come back to your first love. He didn't say, boy, if yous never did get to begin with, or yous wouldn't be backslid. He said, come back to your first love. And the Bible's constantly warning people not to fall back into sin. If you couldn't fall back in sin, why would it be warning you that? But one thing I noticed is one thing that makes me believe in God so much. Everybody I know that's ever been saved and going to church regularly and backslide, they get way more miserable than the average worldly person. I remember in high school, kids I grew up with, the church kids, I think about every kid I know fell into the drugs and alcohol and stuff during high school because we had so many bad influences and the drugs were so common and around here and everything. And man, people would be having a good time, partying and everything, and all the church people would be like, oh, I'm just so miserable, and I'm so miserable. And one of my friends said, one day he was out partying, he told everybody, he said, I haven't been happy in years. He said, I haven't been happy since I was living right, going to church. And he said, everybody in that whole place stopped and said, then why don't you quit all this and go back to church? And he's like, why don't I? That makes sense. But a lot of times when you backslide like that, it's hard to get back here. A lot of people, when the churches start closing down, like, oh, well, I'll come back whenever, everything gets going. And I run into people almost every day. Boy, I'm in bad shape, is what they tell me. I'm in bad shape. Now, how are you doing? I ain't trying to sound proud, but I'm doing a lot better than I've ever been in my life. It's been one of the best years I've ever had because I've stayed faithful. I've learned my lesson from my past to step away from the Lord. I don't want no more chastisement. I don't want no more beatings. But God gives us that chastisement to get us back. And the 7 angels came out of the temple having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure white linen, having their breasts girded with golden girdles. And see, when it talks about you dressed in white and pure and all that, these angels are holy, holy, holy. I don't think, we get a taste of holy when we get saved. We get a taste of holy with the Holy Ghost and all that. But we don't really, we don't have a clue how holy heaven is. That's why, it's sin is not going to be in heaven. And these angels are walking with that white linen. That's a sign that they're holy. And they're carrying these plagues. And it's kind of a contrast. It's letting you know, holiness, judgment is holy. If somebody killed my kids, I don't want them to get a smack on the back and set free. I want justice. And now we got to forgive and we got to be Christian about it. They need to be justice. If somebody steal my neighbor, somebody stole his car the other day. It upset me pretty bad because my neighbor don't make a lot of money. He had a wreck a long time ago and it hurt him real bad and he was proud of his truck. He took good care of it. He just took care of his things. He didn't have much. And then somebody goes and steals his truck. And I wanted that person caught that stole his truck. And I wanted justice. Not because I'm vengeful in my heart and have hatred in my heart. It's just justice is good. And they found the guy that stole it. And he's probably looking at being in prison for the next long time. Because that's all he's ever done is in prison, out, and everything. I still pray for that guy. But I'm glad that there's justice. Justice is good. And a lot of people tell me that they don't believe in hell, they don't believe in God. And let me tell you something about hell. Do you think Hitler escaped hell? Do you think all these wicked people of the past escaped hell? We got a problem over here.
Oh, we're good.
Okay, Ezra, there's going to be a bad problem if you don't get up and move. I don't care what people on Facebook think about me. I said it this morning when I was growing up, we'd hear about preachers calling kids down. That was always amazement to us because we weren't allowed to act up. We had a Hot Wheel and a songbook, and we had to sit there right there, and if you acted up, you got your teeth knocked out. So we'd hear preachers call kids down, we was like, man, we was kids made enough to get called down. And now they bounce off a wall like ping pong table, and if you call them down, everybody's like, he is such a meanie. Look at him calling people down. But hey, there's such thing called church conduct. We want to learn. We want to hear about God. We don't want everybody watching you spill stuff and making messes. And one of the four beasts gave unto 7 angels 7 golden vials for the wrath of God who liveth forever and ever. And when it talks about the 4 beasts, it talks about them early in Revelation. Satan used to be one of them. He was the song leader. He had pipes inside of him. He was so beautiful that he convinced a third of the angels to have a rebellion in heaven. And I talked about this morning, the last few verses in Isaiah, the last chapter of Isaiah, it talks about people in hell, that people in heaven will see them. He talked about in Revelation 14 that they're going to be burning in the presence of the Lord. The cults will tell you, hell, you're not burning forever, you're just separated from God. It says they're going to be burning forever in the presence of the Lord. People in heaven, now I'm not saying you're going to know, like, there's my friend Bob burning, there's my mom burning, there's my cousin burning. I'm not saying you're going to know the people in hell, but in heaven you're going to see people burning in hell. There's a lot of scriptures to back that up. And there's not, hold on. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God. I know what I was going to say now. All right, the first time God made heaven with angels and everything. There wasn't no place to go first. You just born, you was raised up in heaven. Then Satan caused a third of the angels to rebel. That's a lot of angels. That's not heaven when it's got rebellion in it. And they got cast out of heaven. So now we have something we call this life, this earth. And everybody's going to go one of two places. They're going to go to heaven, they're going to go to hell. There's no in-between. We're in the in-between right now. Now, there's a filtering process of who gets to go to heaven and not. If you don't accept Jesus Christ, guess what? You're not going. And Buddha won't get you there. If you think Buddha's so great and he's equal to Jesus Christ, go to these Buddhist nations. I heard missionaries say, if you anything give you more faith in Christ, you go to these other nations where they believe in different religions and see how Buddha has brought nobody nothing. Muhammad's not doing anything for anybody. Hinduism ain't done a thing for nobody. But then you'll go somewhere where Jesus Christ comes and it sets a whole nation free. If they live for him. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. And no man was able to enter the temple, till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. And next week I'll talk about next Sunday morning, chapter 16, and then it's talk about the vials being rolled out. But I wanted to preach on something just a little bit because that was short. I did take a short chapter and kind of make it a little bit long. But I'm going to preach on something just real quick. I'm not going to be here real long. I'm one of the few preachers, I'm probably the weirdest preacher in the world, but I actually am timed. I do tell them to time me because I can get up here and talk all day, and I don't want to do that because I want people to come. I know if you talk too long, people forget the first stuff you said, and a human mind is set to kind of listen for 30 minutes, then we need a break. So I have people time me 30 minutes, but till my time is up, and then I'm going to preach on something real quick if I don't mess it up, but it's something God put in my spirit. And some of the best testimonies you'll hear is when people that been hooked on heroin and tried every way in the world to get off it, and they couldn't. Then they heard the gospel. They just heard Christ and Him crucified. They didn't have to go through no training. They didn't have to go through all this and that. They just heard the gospel and instantly delivered. That's one of the best testimonies you get. That absolutely proves how powerful the Christianity is. It proves how powerful what Jesus done for us is. And I've heard, man, my cousin I told you about that had his truck stolen. He said he used to be a cocaine dealer, a drug dealer. And he said he'd go up north and get it, come back, man, just make a fortune. And he said he'd be knocking on people's doors. And they'd open the door and said their babies wouldn't even have diapers, walk around without diapers on because they're spending all their money on drugs. And he said he didn't care, he'd just take the money and go on. He didn't care about the kids. Now he's been sober for like 11, 12 years. Probably ain't said 5 bad words. 11, 12. He went from a cocaine crack dealer to a good, dedicated, don't miss church, a clean Christian man. That's the power of the gospel. I've seen that my whole life. And the Romans chapter 5 tells you haven't outsinned the gospel. You haven't outsinned being able to be saved. None of us deserves salvation. It don't matter if you've only sinned a few times or you sin all day, every day. You've not outsinned what Jesus has done for you. Now there's blasphemy of the Holy Ghost, but other than that, you've not went too far. Hitler could have got saved if he wanted to accept Jesus Christ as his Savior. Anybody has not done too much where they cannot get saved. It don't mean that there still ain't consequences. It don't mean we still don't have memories. Now, I try not to dwell on memories, and I preach that none of us dwell on memories. We've all done stuff we regret. We can't let our past anchor us. We've got to move on. The Bible tells us not to let our past anchor us. You know, Paul, you can tell it bugged him that he used to kill Christians. And it said he had them killed at the end of Acts. Not only did he hold everybody's coats and allow everybody to stone Stephen in Acts, but at the end of it, he's talking to people and he said, I actually had Christians killed. He had to live with those memories. How many of us, and don't raise your hand, please don't raise your hand. How many of us had done things if we go back in time, we would change it? And that's what I want to tell you young kids tonight. You're up against a lot more than we give you credit for. When I was your age, that was about the time I had to make a decision which way I was going. I thank God I had a grandfather that picked me and my mom, but my mom would have took me anyway. My grandfather didn't. That took me to church, took my brother to church. Me and my brother's got a wild streak. We're wild. We're both mean, in the flesh. But because of being brought up in church, that helped pull us back. I'm thankful for that. Thank God for my upbringing in church. And everybody listen to me. Look, it's worth being bothered. It's worth the effort to get your kids in church. It's worth the effort to pick up the neighbor's kids. It's worth the effort to pick up your cousins, your nieces and nephews, and get them in church. Because they are eternal soul. They are eternal being. Once they are born or once they're conceived, they're not going anywhere as far as an end to them. Now, when they die, it's heaven or hell. They're going somewhere, but their soul will never end. Crazy to bring kids in this world and not try to get them to heaven and not try to get them to Jesus Christ. And not only that, it's the moral. And like I said, I told you guys, don't judge me, please. Let me preach. Let me be a preacher that can preach without getting beat down when I'm done. But you women are going to have men, you young girls are going to have men coming at you. When I was in high school, my first year, it was average, a girl would sleep around about 3 different guys. By the time I graduated high school, they'd slept with 30, 40, 50. A lot of them. That was common. That is not the way God designed things to be. The preachers were going around, and yes, they were, telling you no matter what you do, you still go to heaven once you got saved. And we heard that, and we heard that. Me and Renee was talking about that, James. It was like everybody's on the same page around here. No matter what you do, you still go to heaven. So guess what? We didn't try to fight sin too awful hard. You know, our parents, and I ain't blaming our parents or nothing, but you know, they grew up watching Leave It to Beaver. And then Leave It to Beaver turned into MTV and vulgar and nasty, and the music that was popular, like in the 80s, was just party, have a good time, you know. And then it got into drugs. All the rock stars were all heroin addicts. All the rap stars, they went from wearing big watches and dancing, break dancing, to doing, promoting, smoking crack and weed and pills and everything. Then it got into gangsters wanting to kill everybody, and kids to shoot and fight and everything. The world got wicked because of influences. Now, I want to tell you something about the rock stars and these movie stars that the kids look up to. They ain't got much more talent than the normal person you see here. The only reason they make it because they're willing to compromise and willing to corrupt young people and willing to sin and not have no filter. And I tell you, most rock stars, if it wasn't for their record label and the millions of dollars put in their machines, their songwriters, some of you guys, you got rock stars or movie stars you think's cool, guess what? They got costume designers. They got somebody that grabs them and is like, I'm going to give you a look. And they go home and they draw out pictures and they give them a look and they give them a gimmick. And then they say, there you go, now you got your gimmick. Then they have songwriters. Then they go and they have musicians to play their music. Most of the music you heard in the 60s and stuff, one band played every bit of it. They played, one band played the Beach Boys music, it wasn't even the Beach Boys. Hold on a second, I've heard preachers doing this now. I'm going to have a story. Be quiet. All right. Now I can tell everybody I did it. You know, if it wasn't, they all have people behind them that's making them the star. It ain't them. They weren't born one day and they just had all this talent and they was just like God-like figures. They had people behind them. And then I remember when I got older, they started doing documentaries on the rock stars I liked when I was young, watch. And they said, they're telling you the stories like, man, their life was nightmarish. It was miserable. They all had just the absolute most miserable time. You'd see them on the videos, you know, these guys have women and partying and fun, and you're taking a vacation, going to the beach every day. Man, they were absolutely miserable. And one rock star said he was so miserable he couldn't even get out of bed. He said, I was literally stuck in bed, and I couldn't get out of bed until it was time to go do a show. And they pulled me out of bed, I'd go sing, go back because I was so miserable. I said, I sure would have liked to have known that before I sit and let you influence me on my life choices. Yeah. Just like I said about the stock exchange. You can't have stock exchange right now unless you get an active homosexual. And as I wind down, I want to tell you something. There's statistics, and you can look me up. In America, 1 in 10 kids has been molested. Homosexuality, I worked a job one time. It was back when they used to have temp agencies. They probably still do, I don't know. But you could call in and make your own schedule. They needed work so bad that, you know, you call in and say, hey, I want to work Tuesday night, Thursday morning, Saturday evening. Okay. And they'll find you a place to go. One day they called me and said, I told them I want to work night shift, you know, Monday to Friday, whatever. And they said, man, do you have a problem being around homosexuals? I said, I don't guess. And they said, where we're going to send you, there's a lot of them. And I said, well, whatever, that's fine, I just need work. So I walk in there, and half the women have beards, half the men have, you know. I was like, boy, it's the Twilight Zone. Come find out, I like 20 men in the factory, 2 of them were straight, or in my section of the factory. 20 of them were, 18 were gay, 2 were straight. I was one of the straight ones. And about that same rate with the women, I was like, man, I'm in the Twilight Zone. So, I had a Christian background. I wasn't living good at the time, but I had a Christian background, so I interviewed them. And I'm telling you, that's one reason I'm not so hard on homosexuals. Adultery made the Ten Commandments, and we got adultery. Some of those famous preachers out right now are left their wives for other women in the church. It wasn't something they did in the past, just while they were pastors. I was like, oh, that woman was good, and leave the wife, kids, marry, and go start another church. But most homosexuals have been molested. Pornography came out in America. Free love and all that. And plus the drugs and alcohol. A lot of people molesting kids and don't even remember a thing they did. I've had a friend that got arrested one day. Said, I don't remember a thing I did got arrested for molesting kids. He's like, I don't remember a thing about that. Because he's under the influence of drugs. Pornography, drugs, kids around. So that's how a lot of them end up homosexual. That door was open there. That's why I'm not so hard on them. Because I know when you see a homosexual, you see somebody who's been through some rough stuff. But still, they have to fight that. They need to fight that. And when I worked at that factory, the homosexual would tell me, I'm talking about transvestites. I'm telling you, they'd be on the big-time politicians now. They're so transvestite. And they would literally go to church. Like one guy, he was a man, but he looked like a woman. Men would holler at him and everything because he looked just like a woman. But he would go to church. He'd fix up like a man, make himself look like a man, and go to church. And you know what kind of churches they looked for? They didn't look for no sissy churches that scared to offend nobody. They went to churches that preached against that stuff because they were not happy. Out of all those homosexuals I worked with, trust me, none of them were happy. Gay is a lie. They should have changed that lifestyle to misery. And you can look this up. 1 in 3 homosexual males have HIV. And will get HIV. And that's just one STD. If everybody would have done like the Bible says, you wait till you're married, then you have kids, be fruitful and multiply. There would be 1 STDs. There wouldn't be any divorces. There wouldn't be an unwed pregnancy. And I'm telling you, girls, you better watch these guys, because I know many girls got talked into doing things that they didn't really want to do, get pregnant, and the guy was history. Then you got to find your chances of finding your dream man just got that much harder. Stupid things. Don't let people talk you into the stupid things. I know girls to this day still can't get married my age. Nobody wants them because of all the stupid things they done in their past. Men too. They didn't have nobody to warn them. They had everybody telling them it's okay. I'm telling you, it's not okay. If you want to have an absolutely pure, miserable life, ignore everything I say. My mom was a school teacher. And listen, I'm not judging nobody on things, But I'd ask her, Mom, how many kids in your classroom is living with their biological mom and biological dad? About every year it'd be 2. When my wife was a teacher, I'd ask her, how many kids in classroom live with biological mom, biological dad? Every time the same answer, same 2. Of all the kids, it'd always be 2. That's not the way it's meant to be. So I'm want to warn you guys ahead of time. Be careful. God has sent you here for a reason. He sent you under this ministry for a reason. And we care for you. We care for you a lot. I know I'm a little bit hard on you, but I care for you a lot. I'm not a kiddie person. I'm not like Gary. I'm not a Mr. Rogers style. I just, But I do. I care for the kids a lot. And people might talk about me for fussing at them on the camera. Say, look, they like me. I've had 4 people ask me to raise 4 kids. This year. They wouldn't ask me to raise kids if I was meeting the kids, okay? So, anyway, I'm winding down here. Somebody go ahead and turn me off. And